It's The Local Show on News Radio 570 WSYR, a service of Safe Harbor Wills and Trusts and Geddes Federal Savings and Loan. The Local Show, featuring conversations with business owners, employees, and local business leaders about their successes, challenges, and reasons for doing business right here in Central New York. The Local Show is locally produced by Zoey Advertising. Now, your hosts, Tom and Steve.
Welcome back and welcome in. This is hour number 2 of The Local Show. Get ready for some engaging interviews with Luke Lunkenheimer. He's the chairman of CNY Drives, and Mike Rothman stops by. He's the owner of Rothman Knives, made locally right here. And Josh Lang is a pastor at Redeemer Church, the Syracuse campus. And then we'll talk with Chris and Andrea DeVita. They're the owners of Salt City Bread, all on this hour of The Local Show. We're broadcasting from the Zoey Advertising Studio, sponsored by Safe Harbor Wills and Trusts and Geddes Federal Savings and Loan. We're also on YouTube, so you can actually see clips of the show on YouTube and all the other stuff that Zoey puts up there. So go ahead and like the page and follow the page, and you'll be able to go far with that. Right now, it's great to bring back a guest we had on not too long ago, Luke Lunkenheimer. He's the chairman of CNY Drives. How are you doing today, Luke?
I am always spectacular, brother, and very glad to be back.
That's good to have you. So, you know what? Last time, I had said to my wife, I said, oh, you got to see this Luke Lunkenheimer interview. He's great. I've known your father for probably 30 years, John Lunkenheimer, who's been in the car business for probably 50 years. Right?
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I said to my wife, oh, you got to see Luke. He's all jacked up too and everything. And she goes, I can't tell. So now for our YouTube people, can you give us a double bicep shot?
We can give you a front double.
Yeah, look at that. See? Now everybody can see that he is jacked up and he's been lifting. Now tell people, give a little background of how you got into CNY Drives, what you did before that, and how you got all jacked up.
I hope you got quite a hard drive, because that's a colorful tale. So, I grew up in Cato, New York, so I was kind of big frog, small pond, played for the football team, had visions of grandeur. I wanted to go play college ball and stuff like that. But eventually, as life goes on and you realize in a graduating class of 82 kids that there's a heck of a lot more talent out there than you thought than Section 3 Class C provides. I got an injury, wasn't able to pursue that dream, and I began selling cars. It was the family business, and I decided to try my hand at it. Did the old, I'm going to take a year off and reassess. So started selling cars. It was at a Ford dealership, a local Ford store here. Did very well. But along the way, I decided to get surgery on the shoulder to see if I could, have any shot at playing ball ever again. Right. Surgery didn't go great. Ended up getting dependent on painkillers. And then over the course of time, that developed into a pretty bad addiction. And it goes to a real dark place. There's probably a good solid decade of real bad drug usage. And, always was a worker, always got up and went to work, always worked hard, always was in sales, which having the ability to sell is what provided me the ability to afford the habit. Yeah. But just like addiction with anybody, it kind of goes to a dark place, eventually. There's no real, without serious intervention. You got caught up in it. Yeah, it goes, it gets away from you a lot quicker than you realize. Mm-hmm. So, to the listeners now listening to this, they're like, wow, that took a turn pretty quick, right? Right. But it's important to tell that part of the story because it helps you to understand how I got here. So along that journey, there was people that, witnessed the kind of the downward trajectory and the sad and the defeat. But moving forward, I actually got into some trouble, robbed a bank, okay?
Oh, is that all?
That's all. Not a big deal. Just knocked over a couple 7-Elevens and hit a bank. It was just all in a week's work. But I ended up spending some time in prison, a couple of years. And when I spent that time in prison, when you're alone in a 6x8 cell with a bunch of people that you wouldn't necessarily call your best friend.
Now, was it a real prison, like Rikers Island prison, or?
Elmira Supermax Correctional Facility.
Wow,
it was, I did get a small blessing towards the end. They actually forgot about me, so I got caught. You say to yourself, how does that happen?
Yeah,
right?
How does that happen?
Well, they essentially, when you get locked up, you get a number, and that's who you become, and then you're a number on a list, and then they sort through who's come in at what time, and how long are they sentenced for, what is the nature of their crime, and based on those things, they send you to facilities, whether it's medium, max, supermax, so on and so forth. So, given the fact that I was a drug addict, first-time felon with a non-violent felony, you would think that I would go to a nice cream puff place and, be able to wear a white shirt and play tennis, and no, it wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. They actually forgot about me in reception. So somehow, usually you're supposed to go in there and spend a couple weeks in the reception. Yeah. You get viewed to see if you're a flight risk or an escape risk or suicidal or anything like that, and then they send you along your way. Well, about 5 months into the reception process, I was out in the yard lifting weights with a group of guys, and they're like, man, haven't you kind of been here a while? I said, yeah, it feels like it. So long story short, I ended up in Elmira for almost an entire year, which is a supermax correctional facility where the hardened criminals and the baddest of the bad go. But I was in the reception, so that's a 23-hour-a-day lock-in, 1 hour out of your cell per day. And this was all done by mistake, okay? Now, there's no recourse on the correction system, of course, for something like this, because when you're in the system, you're in there. But so one day a guy says to me, he goes, you're a non-violent felon. This is your first felony. It's drug-related. He goes, why don't you request shock? And I said, well, what's shock? And I'd heard about it, but I didn't know what it was. And it was a paramilitary boot camp where if you agree to go into this program, you become essentially the property of the drill instructor and the team of drill instructors it was in Mariah, New York. It was way up on the Vermont border. And I remember days it was negative 20 degrees outside, running 5 miles.
And how old were you at this time?
It was probably, it's about 30. So it's about a decade ago. So I was about 30 years old. I spent my 30th birthday in prison, and then I was able to get out shortly after that. I do remember that. Mm-hmm. So probably 28 to 30 would be that time span. So I went to the prison counselor, and I was telling her that I had heard about this shock camp, and what's the deal here? And she's looking through my paperwork, and she kind of chuckles. And I go, what? She goes, well, when you go to shock camp, it's a 6-month program, and if you complete it successfully, you can go home. And I'm like, okay. She goes, unfortunately, though, you've already been in here X amount of time. So if you go to the shock camp, it's really only going to cut off 17 days from your sentence. Yeah, right. So she says, well, why don't you just, we'll send you to a medium. You can cook, eat, get packages, watch some TV. And I said, no, ma'am. You said I could go home 17 days early? She said, yeah. I said, give me that shock camp. Every day is precious. So I went and spent 6 months in a paramilitary boot camp running 5-10 miles a day, PT, push-ups, getting screamed at.
Yeah. Some people pay for that.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah.
So that was a choice that I made at the time because that wasn't the life for me. You get put in a place like that, and I cherish every moment of it. People, I say that to people, and they're like, "You're out of your mind, man. What could you enjoy about that?" Yeah. And I said, I didn't say enjoy. I said I cherished. Okay, which means you take the memory, you hold it close to your chest, and you remember that's a place you never ever want to go again. Okay. Right. So I got out of the shock camp. Actually, broke my femur while I was in there. Yep. Wow. And finished the what's called the captain's run, which is like a 10-mile run with a broken femur. Little pat on the back there, in case you didn't notice. They took it a little easy on me because I still chose to finish. But anyways, so I said long story short about 4 times, so we're going to have to scratch that. But I got out of shock camp, and then I went back into the workforce. And I was fired from a job very quickly because they found out I was a felon, even though I disclosed it on my job application. Sure. Gentleman reached out to me that I'd sold cars with in the past, asked me if I was interested in running a dealership with him as a partnership because he knew my skills and talent in the car business were honed. Right. So I did that for about 11 months, took his business from a very small Winnebago trailer on a gravel lot in Scriba to a lot in Fulton with probably 40 cars, a $250,000 line of credit, and a good income for the both of us. Yeah. And then he robbed me because he was a drug addict. So I got reintroduced to that whole nefarious activity of the drug addict. So then I went back to work for a gentleman who's a real kind soul, local business owner, and he gave me an old job that I had originally been fired from by him for the drug usage back. He reached out to me and he said, listen, you need good, steady employment. I know you're better now. I'll give you the job. Worked there for 60 days. After 60 days, he came to me and offered to invest for me to open up CNY Drives because he knew that was a dream of mine. Last thing I ever expected that day. But and there's, of course, I could be more colorful with the description of how that came to fruition. But obviously, we're limited on time.
Oh, my goodness.
He entered in with an investment. We opened the company, and here we are 4 stores later and 6 years. And
CNY Drives. Yeah. CNYDrives.com. Isn't that something? Yeah. We could keep you on forever, and we're going to have you back for sure. Just really quickly, because we're counting down here, but in 10 seconds or so, tell people about your podcast and where they might find that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. A little plug for Man of the Free. Sure. So I chose to kind of bring my story to light and try to help people. So we've created a YouTube channel and a podcast. It's called Man of the Free, Freedom of Mind, Money, and Media. And it's they can find it on YouTube. The YouTube handle is Luke Lunk, Lukelunk. And it's just getting started. There's going to be some bumps and fumbles, but we got some pretty good production staff. We got, the best of the best equipment. And, we'll see how bad I screw it up.
Excellent. Luke Lunkenheimer right there, chairman of CNY Drives, CNYDrives.com. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back again.
Appreciate it, guys. Always a pleasure.
Next up, a local guy who makes knives. I didn't know you could make them here locally. Mike Rothman, yeah, that's right, owner of Rothman Knives, here on the local show on 570 WSYR.